For decades, security leaders have relied on security, information, and event monitoring, or commonly known as SIEM, as a key component for their security operations centers. And while still relevant, SIEM solutions are in need of a makeover to keep up with modern threats and to take advantage of emerging technologies like data analytics, machine learning, and cloud based services. That makeover is taking shape as the Intelligent SIEM Platform, often and interchangeably referred to as Next-Gen SIEM. Hi, everybody. Jim Malone here, Senior Content Strategist with CIO Marketing Services. We're delighted you can be with us for this timely and informative session, sponsored today by Gurucul. We have a great session lined up, so without further ado, let's meet our speakers. First, let's say hello to Warwick Ashford, who's Senior Analyst with KuppingerCole Analysts. Hi, Warwick. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about your role at a KuppingerCole Analysts.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for the welcome. Yes, I research cybersecurity and identity-related topics, but really more on the cybersecurity side. That's where my experience is. And my most recent reports have been on data loss prevention, DLP, managed detection and response, MDR, and intelligent SIEM platforms, of course.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Warwick. Delighted you could be with us. Now let's say hello to Chris Shields, who's Vice President for Product Marketing at Gurucul. Hi, Chris. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about Gurucul and your role there.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Chris Shields. I am the product marketing guy here, so I help in any terms that I can to help market our product to the market, and I love that. I've dabbled in product management, operations early on in my career. I did IT and IT consulting and sales, but I've really found my home and love what I do and helping businesses solve real world problems with technology. So that's kind of my passion. Gurucul, we are a security analytics company at the end of the day, founded in data science. And we hope to deliver radical clarity to the security operations centers and insider threat teams, because that's what they need in today's day and age of just unbelievable amounts of data.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Chris. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We couldn't be more timely here, so appreciate you being with us for today. Now, before we get started, I have just a couple of housekeeping items to help you get the most out of today's session. Be sure to check out that additional resources section of your player. There you're going to find lots of great information. You can do a deep dive on today's topic. You can download a copy of today's presentation, among other great resources, including the 2024 KuppingerCole Intelligent SIEM Leadership Compass that's guiding much of today's conversation. So do take advantage of that. And finally, a big thanks to our sponsor, Gurucul, for making today's event possible. So without further ado, let's jump into our discussion. And to do that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Warwick Ashford. Warwick, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Well, as we all know, SIEMs have had a bit of a checkered history. They've tended to overpromise and undeliver, but they've also tended to be complex and expensive to run. So there have been several generations of SIEMs that have attempted to improve the image of SIEMs, but with varying degrees of success. So that's why for this latest evolution of the SIEM market, we chose Intelligent SIEM Platforms as the title, because it's more specific than the latest generation or the next generation. So the research shows that SIEMs are evolving by incorporating the latest technologies to meet real end user needs. It sort of also shows that this market is still growing because effective cyber defense still requires unified platforms for gathering, analyzing, and correlating security events from multiple sources to provide an overview of all security-related events across the whole enterprise, and to raise alerts and provide tools for things like forensic analysis. Historically, SIEMs have served as the focal point of security operations centers, or SOCs, to support things like threat detection, investigations, incident management, and, of course, regulatory compliance. And that really hasn't changed. What has changed is the business IT environment and the threat landscape. In general, there's an increased reliance on IT and data in modern business, and most organizations are producing more data than ever before that needs to be protected. the IT attack surface has expanded with things like digital transformation, bringing along more mobile computing, cloud services from multiple cloud providers, and edge computing. Also, we're seeing the adoption of flexible working, which was, of course, accelerated by the pandemic, and the increased use of personal devices for work. At the same time as all this, we're seeing continued industrialization of cybercrime and the proliferation of threats. And all that's been exacerbated by the worldwide shortage of skilled cybersecurity professionals. So I think the bottom line here is that traditional SIMs are no longer effective, which has resulted in the demand for something better. And the market has responded, I'm glad to say, by taking advantage of things like data analytics, including user and entity behavior analytics, big data, cloud-based services, advanced security orchestration, automation and response, or SOAR capabilities, and of course, machine learning, ML, and other forms of artificial intelligence. So as a result, we're seeing previously standalone tools like behavior analytics and SOAR being merged into a single integrated platform. And the new technologies I've just mentioned are helping to do things like reduce the number of alarms in general and the number of false positives in particular by improving the accuracy of detections, by identifying patterns and anomalies, by correlating related events, and enriching data with business context and threat intelligence, and by improving search capabilities. So these are all the areas that we're seeing innovation in. And the new technologies are also helping to filter and prioritize security alerts and threats, to automate analyst workflows, and to respond faster to security threats. These are all things that we didn't see in the more traditional SIMs. And so I'd say, in other words, intelligent SIMs typically improve the speed and efficiency of analysts in triage processes, investigations, analysis, and remediation to support a proactive approach to cyber defense, which I think is going to emerge as a key theme today. For the report, we drew up a list of required capabilities, and then we used that as a basis for a very detailed questionnaire for participating vendors. And we then analyzed the answers and compiled the report, scoring across 9 areas such as functionality, deployment, usability. We also focused on 8 key evaluation areas, which were things like data collection, correlation and enrichment, threat detection, forensic investigation, incident response, intelligence and automation, compliance, and then finally cloud support. So those were the areas that we drilled down into in great depth, and so you'll find the write-up on each of the vendors who participated in the report. So our high-level findings include that SIM solutions remain relevant due to their evolution to meet the needs of modern business IT environments, and the continued need to gather, analyze, and correlate security events from multiple sources. We also found that the SIM market is highly competitive and continues to grow, with an increasing focus on compliance reporting and automation capabilities. Actually, here at KuppingerCole, we estimate that the SIM market size will grow to $6.15 billion in 2025 and $6.58 billion in 2026. And that's up from $5.64 billion in 2024. So we expect to see the continued evolution of Intelligent SIEM solutions as security management and intelligence platforms. And we expect Intelligent SIEM solutions to become increasingly available as cloud-based services and as managed services to address the market needs in terms of flexibility, cost, and skills. And I guess that's it from my side for now. So back to you, Jim.
Thanks so much, Warwick. Really great information. So interested. Let's dive in. Let's get Chris Shields involved in the conversation. Chris, Warwick touched on so many things, but I'm interested to hear from the Gurucul point of view what you're seeing going on with SIMs. One of the interesting things, Warwick mentioned SIMs is still a robust technology, a robust approach. It is ready to be modernized. What are you seeing at Gurucul?
Yeah, great question, Jim. Before I jump into that, I really want to just take a moment just to say outside of the vendor evaluation for this report work, I just want to throw some kudos your way that the amount of thought leadership that you put into this intelligent SIEM and thinking about, how these things need to evolve, I feel is worth its weight in gold just for getting that out of the report in and of itself. Of course, the vendor evaluation is great for us because we did well. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that. Yeah. So, we're seeing a lot of the same things and pains that I remember, from back in the day when I was doing IT and IT consulting, circa 2005, 2008, 2010, it's, too noisy, too many alerts, too many false positives. It's too difficult to ingest data into the system. I'm, struggling to get more value out of it. So, we're hearing a lot of the same things that we heard, over the past decade, really, in terms of SIEM. And I think it's great that they're evolving and that the market is seeing that evolution. And I think the thing that's interesting to me is when I'm, because I'm a marketing guy, right? So I write all these things that you can read on any vendor site, oh, we reduce false positive. We've got amazing machine learning analytics. We're, data science, artificial intelligence, right? We can throw in all those keywords. And when I was doing IT consulting, right, I was a buyer. And I do not envy the buyers today. And so kind of glad I moved to the dark side, so to speak, working for a vendor. But, at the end of the day, to me, it's the evolution. The buyers won't see the evolution until they start to, do some of their own research and actually, start doing, getting demos, right? Like make sure you've got a highly defined, set of problems that you're trying to solve, or that your current SIEM isn't trying to solve, that isn't solving for you today. Because let's be honest, most enterprises of any size have some kind of SIEM tool today that's falling down, or maybe not doing some of the things they needed to do. So come with that predefined list, and really ask the hard technical questions on these demos, and make sure that it is truly easier to ingest the data and get value out of it. And, like, how do you get high fidelity detections? Because, just because you see an anomaly, right, doesn't mean that that's, a threat or a risk to your business. I like to use the example of you're at the airport and you see somebody run up the down escalator, right? That is certainly an anomaly, but you don't know if that guy's just grabbed somebody's purse or stole something, or is running away from the police. They might just be late for a flight and the up escalator was crowded. So it's, pulling all these pieces of context together to see like what happened before, what happened after, and like linking all that together to really, say, okay, that is a threat to the business.
Thanks, Chris. Warwick, I want to touch on some of the challenges that you're seeing in your engagements for when thinking about the next-gen SIEM. Let's use that for shorthand. Chris has touched on it. You touched on too the data question, which seems to me maybe not as big of a problem as it has been. But anyway, I'd love to hear from you, from your expert point of view, Warwick. What are some of the most prevalent challenges you're hearing about? And Chris, love to hear you chime in too.
Well, I think I'd like to start by saying that in general, enterprise security leaders want to be able to improve their organization's overall cyber resilience. And as part of that, they want to improve their ability to identify cyber risks. They want to be able to act on threat intelligence. They want to be able to prioritize security incidents and to combine and enrich multiple security data sources. So you're right, the data is an issue, because it's often difficult to identify potential threats early enough to be proactive. And it's usually difficult to get a complete picture of their security posture. But traditional SIEMs are often unable to help because they don't scale easily or economically. As organizations grow, it becomes really expensive and quite messy to scale their SIEM solutions. They can't deal with the volume of logs being generated nowadays. When they were introduced around 20 years ago and in the subsequent iterations, they just weren't designed to deal with this volume of data coming through. And there are also often challenges with integration with other security systems. And typically they either lack or have extremely limited automation capabilities. In addition, they're also complex and often labor intensive. and as I said, expensive to run. So for me, I think those are the main challenges that organizations are facing when it comes to SIM, and Chris touched on some of those earlier as well.
Yeah, it does. I think I think there's a strong belief that there is a high barrier of entry to like bring on a new SIM, right? Like if you think about all the years that you've invested and all the dollars that you've invested in your current SIM that's letting you down for whatever reason, right? It becomes put my IT consulting hat on, right? That is a huge project. Like if you think about trying to rip that thing out and put something new in. And I think, some of these new intelligent SIMs, love the term work, that, if they're designed well, right, they were designed to be open and flexible, right, so that they can adapt, because every enterprise is unique, right? I don't care if you've got two like automobile manufacturers that are about the same size and the same location, making the same kind of cars, right? Those two entities are completely unique, right? Just like every individual is unique. And so you need a platform that can adapt to your enterprise and not force you to adapt, to that tool, right? Like if you need that tool to do Y and it can only do X, right? Then you've got a problem, and you're, bending and changing your security policies and workflows and whatever, and how you like deploy the product, that isn't ideal for the way you want. So I think one of the things that is most interesting, and I actually forgot to mention this on the earlier thing, is the thing that we hear the most is that, I am trying to do X with my tool and I needed to do Y, and it is rigid and inflexible and I'm not able to do Y. Right. So I think, there is, we call it a SIM augmentation play, right? Is you can't, for whatever reason, right? Whether it's political or, financial or contractual, you can't just rip what you have out today, but you can augment what you have on a journey, right? To eventually maybe ripping out a tool. So I think that, the belief that the barrier of entry is so high, like it's not, it's not just about technology, right? It's people, process, and technology, right? So you can pick great technology, but, from our perspective, right, we want to make sure our customers get up and running and value from the system. So we've got a quick start program where, we do that for them in as little as 6 weeks, right? And 2 or 3 of those weeks we're relying on them. But we work with them shoulder to shoulder to make sure they get the right data in, and only the right data in for those specific use cases that I talked about, that you need to be prescriptive with the vendors on what you're trying to solve or what you can solve today, and then getting that value really quickly.
Warwick, I want to double click on just a minute on something Chris mentioned, kind of that legacy, that tech debt, that legacy. Did that come up in your research as a significant barrier? Was it a black and white choice, rip and replace, or how did that play out in your research?
I think the biggest challenge, and Chris has alluded to it already, is that they want to be able to see a quick return on investment. I think that's one of the biggest barriers to entry, is they're not sure about the ROI at this point, and I think until that can be demonstrated to them in terms of how much they will kind of save and the efficiency gains, that's kind of a barrier. But then there's also the integration story, because I think just, it's cost, complexity, and integration. And that's why I agree with Chris, is that one of the things that I liked about the SIM solutions that we looked at is this tendency to be modular, to be flexible, and to complement and integrate with existing security systems. I think that's what they've got going for them. So that often organizations don't have to make that rip and replace decision. I think the leading SIM solutions are designed to be easier and implement as well as run than their predecessors. I think that's part of the whole point.
Yeah, interesting, Chris. I want to kind of expand on that a little bit. These SIMs don't exist in a vacuum. They often part, especially at the enterprise level, part of a security operations center. So what are some of the common issues with security operations centers today, and SIM's role in that security operations centers, that are well adapted to a platform approach?
Yeah, I think, to me, open and flexible comes to mind here. I already talked about that, so I won't belabor that point. But I think, when you think about, the old methodology of defense in depth, right? You've got a lot of tools, you got a lot of consoles, and like Warwick said, you've got to be able to integrate with these tools, right? So that it improves the value of your SIEM or your XDR or UEBA or whatever, as well as help enrich and make those other tools better. So you need APIs to have two-way bi-directional. For instance, you want to open a ticket in ServiceNow or some ITSM, right? And then when that ticket gets closed, you want that information to flow back into the SIEM as well, because most SIEMs, right, have case management, and you want to know that that case is closed. So it's integrations, trying to reduce the amount of swivel chair activity. I remember from my IT days, right? You see something interesting over here, and then you've got to flip over here to this console. You got to go log in and do some research here, and then you got to flip over to this third console and do some research here. So I think the best intelligent SIEMs will pull all of that information from those tools and only only the right data, and then puts that together and links that all together so that you've got a case of evidence that is defensible and that you can take action on, all in one tool. So I think reducing, it's all about people cost, right, is the most expensive thing. So if I just keep having you mentioned the skill shortage work, right? It's tough to find great analysts, and then it's just you can't just keep throwing people at the problem. So I think that's where the technology can start to help improve that analyst efficiency.
Excellent. Chris, let's think for a minute and kind of distill some of what we talked about into maybe some ideas for some of the features of a modern next-gen SIEM, so to speak, that viewers should keep in mind when they're thinking about maybe either starting or accelerating their kind of modernization journey for the SIEM.
Wow, that is a loaded question. How much time do we have, Warwick and Jim? I will try to keep it brief. I think there's a few main things that I think are super important, right? In terms of that, again, broken record, right? Open and flexibility. Many of these enterprises have their own data lake, and sometimes multiple data lakes, right? So they determine that they picked data lake X and it's the best of breed, and that's what they have. And so you need to have the flexibility, to work with any data lake, or, if you don't have a data lake, no problem. You can use, whatever is existing in the tool, right? It's got to be able to scale. So, it's got to be data lake agnostic, so to speak. It's got to be cloud agnostic, right? And IT environment agnostic. And what I mean by that is, right, most enterprises, some companies may be 100% board in the cloud. Lucky for them. I'm sure it's a little easier to be a buyer, but even those companies will have multi-cloud, right? They won't have everything all in one cloud. They'll have some over here and some over here and some over here. And some have an on-prem component. So you need a tool that, can work with, architecturally, right, can be flexible enough to deploy anywhere, anyhow, and get the data you need from wherever it may come from. So the second thing is, I mentioned this earlier, right, is, a common problem that's been a problem for a long time is getting the data into the tool, right? So that's all about, flexibility in terms of, integrations, right, and connectors, and making sure that you can get the right data in at the right time. And it's not about, you may have, I'm not a super technical person, but, I've heard some of our SEs and SAs talk about, each packet, let's just say, I'm probably using the wrong terminology, comes in and it's got 1,000 pieces of information in it. And really the only pieces of information that you need to bring in that SIEM are maybe 100 of those pieces of information, right? If you bring in the whole 1,000, right, that's an additional cost. So being able to filter down to bring in just what you need at the right time, making it easy to do that, because the funny thing about, you can have the best analytics and the best data science in the world. If you don't get the right data in at the right time, then everything to the right of that process is just completely wasted. So, I know one of our personal design pillars when we're developing our tool is we got to make it super easy. And we, got a wizard where you can do it in a 4-step process and build it yourself, and, not have to wait for somebody to build it. So that's super important to us. I think something else is purpose-built content where maybe you don't have data scientists on your team, right? And you get the data in, right? You've done all that hard work to get the data into the tool. You need it to work and provide value on day one. We talked about that ROI, work that you mentioned where, it's got to start providing value day one, and then you can work to customize it and import models or rules that you already have in an existing SIEM. Or if you do have a data science team and they write some great model that's specific to their environment, you got to be able to have the ability to import that into the tool. Let's see, analytics, right? You can't have black box analytics because every enterprise is unique, and what works great in this environment might work okay in this environment. So you got to have the ability to, customize the models, right? And something in the tool that, it allows you to do that without requiring you have data scientists on staff, because not every company has data scientists on staff. So you have to have kind of like a visual, wizard driven, GUI type of thing where, just about any analyst can go in and, massage or create or, whatever, customize those models for specific for your environment. And then I guess I know we're probably running on time here. Last one is, risk, and having the ability to prioritize what's most important, right? You may have 1,000 alerts on a daily basis, but based on your current level of staffing, you can only get to 100 of those on a daily basis. I liken it to the Microsoft, Patch Tuesday, right? You just spent all week just patching all the previous bugs that they just released last Tuesday, and then now you got a whole new batch, right? You can't patch everything, so you have to make sure that your risk scores are quantifiable and normalized, so that what's most important, so that you can get to the most important 100 of those issues. So I think that's quite a few things there. I'll stop there.
No, great info, Chris. Thanks so much. Warwick, as the author of the 2024 KuppingerCole Intelligent SIEM Leadership Compass, which we're talking about today, talk a little bit about how a modern intelligent SIEM, like we've been talking about, for example, with Gurucul, how can that position an enterprise for the future? What were some of the strengths and advantages you looked into for the report, and how do they fit into a future-ready approach?
Well, in terms of Intelligent SIEM's positioning enterprise for the future, I think it's really a combination of all the things we've been talking about, such as enhanced threat detection and response, scalability and flexibility, the automation and orchestration, and the integration with security data sources, analytics and risk management, and continued innovation, really. And I like the point that Chris was making about the risk management and sort of the risk approach, because I think that's definitely a trend that we're seeing in the IT industry in general, is this kind of a more risk-based approach to everything, so that everyone's dealing with the priorities rather than just going after everything, because that's not possible. So I think ISIEM solutions can position enterprises for the future by enabling them to be proactive in cyber defense and agile in their incident response. And the reason Gurucul scored highly across the 9 categories I mentioned earlier is that it's extremely feature-rich in support of all these categories, which is reflected in the scatter graphs in the report showing product leadership, market leadership, innovation leadership, and overall leadership. The Gurucul Next-Generation SIEM is also strong across most of the key evaluation areas, especially intelligence and automation. I was very impressed with those. Incident response, forensic investigation, data collection. As Chris was saying, it's the important thing is getting the data in, and that was definitely one of the strengths that I saw with the Gurucul solution. And then, of course, cloud support, with good support for hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, and distributed environments. In the report, in the section on Gurucul, I called out various strengths, such as the strong and mature behavior and security analytics supported by machine learning and deep learning, and the rapid and unlimited data collection capability that I've already mentioned, including cloud identity systems and IoT devices. But the things I found particularly interesting was the availability of specialized licensing for MSSPs, because At KuppingerCole, our view is that more and more organizations are going to be drifting towards the MSSP model. And I think it's interesting that Gurucul has recognized this, and they're kind of making allowances for it in the licensing model, which I think is great. Also, I like the context-driven threat hunting and incident investigations. And the precise incident response with dynamically generated playbooks. So maybe Chris could talk about that if we still got time. Federated search across distributed architectures. I think this is really important, and that was why it scored highly there. And then I also like the attack chain identification capability. So this is the whole thing with Intelligent SIEMs. Rather than raising 5 separate alerts, they're going to come back and they'll be able to say, these 5 alerts are linked, and we think that this looks like it's part of a single threat. And so that the analyst doesn't have to worry about 5 separate things. They can just take the information and go have and investigate one incident, which may be made up of 5 different alerts. I also like the strong support for regulatory compliance, the automated data passing, and support for incident simulation for testing and improving existing workflows. In fact, I didn't see this across many or any of the other solutions that I looked at. And I really like that, because I think it's really important for organizations to be able to see, well, are we able to do what we think we can do?
Yeah, it's, it's when I joined Gurucul just about a year ago now, it was like we're the best kept secret in the SIEM space, and it's great to get some of that recognition and the strengths that you saw work. I remember from my IT days, anytime a vendor said, automation, right? I was always like, whoa, like I want human eyeballs on this. But I think the reality of when you're able to, we do something called model chaining, right? And so remember we talked about the escalator, that's an anomaly, right? But like for instance, when you can chain multiple models from different sources together, so let's say you see a malicious file is downloaded from Zscaler, right? Your proxy, right? That's an anomaly, right? It's got some small amount of risk, I would say. But then when you say it's like if then statements, right? And then you see Carbon Black or whatever, the endpoint says, oh, this payload was actually executed. And then the next model that you link is, say, from like a Lumu or a Darktrace from your network analytics that says, I'm now seeing CNC communications from this endpoint, right? And you link all those together with a model chain, you could be pretty sure that there's something going on, and you can kick off some, I wouldn't say you can't automate everything, but you can certainly automate those repetitive and mundane tasks, right? If you're going to run if you saw that chain of events, you could just kick off a scan like that. You can automate, right? You might not rip that endpoint off the network right away. You would start to get eyeballs on it while you're running the scan, and it's providing you, additional details. So I think, unless companies are able to start to automate all this mundane and repetitive tasks, I think they're going to continue to struggle. So you got to have faith in those high fidelity detections. When you see all these pieces come together with the full context and that case of evidence I talked about, and then you can feel comfortable starting to automate some of that small stuff. Like, hey, force a prompt for MFA, right? Start a scan. The low hanging fruit, so to speak.
Thanks, Chris. We've been talking with Warwick Ashford, with KuppingerCole analyst, Chris Shields with Gurucul. We have a couple minutes left, and Warwick, I wanted to finish here with kind of a future-forward question, and that is, in what areas are you seeing, or do you expect to see, the most innovation in SIEM solutions?
Oh, wow. Okay. I think we're going to see a lot more movement towards the fully integrated unified platforms, because I think, as we've been discussing and Chris mentioned earlier, it's all about the platform play. I think one of the biggest challenges that SOC staff are seeing is, as he said, was the swivel chair action. There were too many tools. There were too many sources of data. And I think that where the intelligent SIEMs are coming in, where these next-gen SIEMs are coming to their own, is that they're enabling it to pull it all into one integrated platform, and so that's delivering the most value. And I think we'll see a lot more kind of innovation around that. The other area I think we'll probably see innovation around is improved search functionality. So I think we're going to see a lot more vendors coming to the market with fast, hot, and cold search. With federated search to catch up with the leaders like Gurucul, and with AI supported search, so that analysts don't have to master query language and things like that. They can just ask questions directly and get some support. So that's around intelligent decision making. I think we'll see a lot there. And again, I think we'll see more assistance or like chatbots based on generative AI, where analysts can just say, look, this is what I want to know, and then it will come back with a kind of an intelligible response, so that they don't have to search here, there, and everywhere. I think automation is just going to continue. I think, Chris, you're right. People were and still are fairly nervous about automation in security space in general. But I think as the market matures, and as AI technology matures and people get more comfortable with automation, there will be a lot more innovation around that. Also collaboration, not only across the SOC team itself, but across the entire enterprise. I think big data is becoming really important to any organization, and so everybody needs to be able to see what's going on, how well is it reported, how well is it protected as well. And I think we're going to see a lot more support for SOCs, not only in IT, but also in OT environments. We haven't talked about that very much, but I think we're going to see innovation in that area, where there's going to be a lot more support for operational technology. And one of the other things that comes to mind is file integrity and registry monitoring, because these are kind of the canaries in the coal mine, aren't they? Where if there's something going awry, it's going to be happening there. So I think those are the main areas that I can think of that we will see innovation.
Yeah, that's great, Warwick. You really hit a lot of them on the head. The one AI to me right now is still just a buzzword. I think we're only, it's even as rapidly as it's evolving. I think, we've only begun to see like the surface of the benefit that it can bring. Now, of course, I won't get into all the negative stuff, because there's a lot of, implications with AI that, people way smarter than me have to worry about. But I think, and you touched on a couple of them. I think, having an artificial intelligence like tool in your SIEM is great, right? And you can, you don't have to be a coder, right? You can just say, hey, what's the latest information you have on the ransomware group X, right? And it'll come back with, information from public sources. But I think there's a couple caveats there, right? Is, having a built-in native secure AI is important, as opposed to like bolting on AI, or even just going into a chat GPT and just typing in your question, because that question becomes part of the public domain, right? So you need to make sure that, your data is protected and it's not ending up out in the public domain. But I think, some of the interesting areas where we're innovating around AI is ours isn't just like a public search, right? Ours actually gets insights, and you can actually search on your own enterprise data. And I think that some interesting innovations are going to come from that, like, what's a new maybe machine learning model that I could write based on what I'm seeing in this environment, or maybe I can improve that one. And we're already doing some of those things behind the scenes. We haven't quite exposed that to the end customer yet, but it's still like, if a new model's suggested by our AI, we'll eventually put it into GA production. But I think that where you talked about that, the response side, I think, generating those, based on what I'm seeing in this environment and the typical responses, I can start, I being the AI, right? I'm not AI by any means, but the AI can start to suggest those playbooks, right? And say, hey, the last 10 times something similar to this happened, you did X, Y, and Z, right? Here's a playbook that does X, Y, and Z. We can just kick this off the next 10 times it happens. So I think it'll start to bring that comfort level around, automating some of those responses. So I think there'll be a lot of innovation around AI.
Thanks so much, Chris. Unfortunately, that brings us to the end of our time for this session. We've been chatting with Chris Shields with Gurucul, Warwick Ashford with KuppingerCole Analysts. Thank you both for your insights and inspiration. Really, it feels like this is a domain that's on the precipice of some really, really interesting evolution, let's say, at scale and at pace. So you guys have done a great job kind of sketching out a roadmap for our audience here. So thank you so much. A big thanks to Gurucul for sponsoring today's session. I want to point out before we go that you can find out a lot more about Next-Gen SIEM platforms at Gurucul.com. Also, check out the additional resources section of your player. You'll find lots of great information there, including the ability to download a copy of today's presentation and a copy of the 2024 KuppingerCole Leadership Compass on Intelligent SIEM Platforms. That kind of was the genesis of today's discussion. So you can do that and take a really good deep dive. So we really recommend you take advantage of that. And with that, for Gurucul CIO Marketing Services, Jim Malone saying, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, Warwick.
Thanks. Bye.